Welcome again to another IronCAD demonstration using Too Tall Toby's practice models. This is dated 7/12. This is a transport hanger. Fairly sort of complex model here. So we're going to start with the main cylinder that we have a curved piece here off the back that has a tangency and some information for a radius, an angle, and also has a reference dimension from 32 from this face. That's something we'll have to deal with. Also, this piece here is also 90 degrees cut from the center. From these offset locations, so we'll have to deal with that cut in order to put our blends on here. So anyways, we'll do this in IronCAD mainly with most of our standard features. We'll edit the cross section for this back piece here to edit that. So let's go ahead and hop over to IronCAD and we'll start designing this model. So first I'm going to start off with the cylinder. This is the main piece of the part, so we'll just drag and drop that out, and it has a diameter of 90 and the thickness of this is 52, so I'll go ahead and set that as a starting point. So next, what we're going to do is just this down piece here, and what we'll do is just drop an extrude on here, and what we'll do in this case is we do know that from the center of this model, so we're going to snap this back to the center. If you add, I'm going to drop my arrow key over to the right, I'm going to add 15 to get that location for that piece there. And then I'm going to flip it, so I'm going to get it into the model and snap it back to that back edge. And now I can get this width, which is going to be that 15 that we had, plus another 15 for the thickness of the back of the model, and 25. So we'll say 30 plus 25 inside of there. And then we do know, we don't know this actual bottom value here. So I'm just going to pull it down a ways because we don't really know what that's going to be. So that's our starting location for our model. And next I'll just simply drop a cylinder onto the center point. And what we're going to do is set the diameter of this guy, which is at 38 times 2, which is 38 radius, times 2, and what we'll do again is we'll just flip that to the other side, inside of there, and we do know the depth of this guy is actually 15 from that side, so that's where it's going to be, but we need to position this, so we're going to use the TriBall, which puts us in the center, and I'm going to snap it up here to the center of this part by holding the shift key down, and we know from the dimensions that this needs to go down 145 from the bottom. Okay, so that gives us our starting location for this piece, and what we're going to do is edit this cross-section by right-clicking, edit the cross-section inside of here, and we have some display settings for our sketch, but we need to see everything here because what we need to do is refer to this existing geometry. So what we're going to do is going to do a tangent to the circle, and we can see our snap angles there. We have an angle of 9 there, we want it to be 8 degrees, and we can pull this back a little ways. We really don't need it to be that far into the model. Again, it just needs to be 8 because the overall angle between this and the other is 16, so 8 will be our distance there. What we're going to do is mirror this, so we're going to select our curve that we want to mirror, right click, then select our axis, and we can hit OK to apply that. That will give us our two curves there, and just now we need to close that off with a polyline. We'll just close that there and trim off this extra curve. And we can see that the highlights inside of there, and that's our model that we want to get built. At this stage, we can go ahead and add a blend here, which has a value of 100. Let's see, let me double check that. Yeah, 100 for the radius, so it's quite large, but it's a smooth curve here, so we'll select that as well on the other side to create that. So that gives us that shape there. Now we can go ahead and do this here for this cutout. So what we're going to do is use the center point, and it has a circle cut. If you just flip this around here, we don't want to cut that geometry, we want to cut the top, but we do know that this has it gives us a dimension of 90 for the radius, so 180 diameter to cut that geometry there. So fairly easy to get that using our standard shapes. And then we can go ahead and blend these two edges, which they have a value of 9 inside of there to get that shape. All right. Next, we're going to go ahead and drop a cylinder onto the back on the center point, and this has a radius on this, or is it a diameter of 38 for that, and the height of this guy, so we got that handle highlighted there, the height of this guy is 15, so that gives us our starting point for that. Next, we're going to build this nice curved piece here, so what we're going to use is a standard extrude feature, and I'm just going to drop it on the center here, and our extrudes have sketches in this case. This is sitting right here on the bottom on our sketch, which is in the wrong orientation, so we're going to use the TriBall. We're going to simply rotate this down 90 degrees so that our sketch is along this the shape. And we need to move it in 4 millimeters because this width of this guy is actually 8. So we hit that to 4. That's 4 from the center, and then the other side is 8. We can get that in the right location. And I'm just going to snap this up to the center point here. It doesn't really matter at this point. Let me double check that. Yeah, that's 8 millimeters. And we can just pull this up a little ways. One thing we do want to do is align this to the back edge here. And we'll use this as reference, so we know that it has to be 32 from there. We're going to have a tangency from this arc here. So that will give us our starting point, and now we can edit the cross-section of that curve there. And a couple things we want to do. A lot of this is going to be construction geometry, so we really don't need to use any of this geometry. So we're just going to select all this, right-click, and use as construction only, so we don't have to deal with it later. But we do want to fix this curve and this curve. We may need well, we could use this curve here at the back later, so we'll show you how to do that in a second. So we have this here because this gives us our distance of 32 for that. And now we need to reuse this other geometry. In our case, we're going to project that as a constraint, and it's going to be construction because we really don't need that geometry inside of there, so we'll do that. And then to get back to our orientation, we just hit our flat view to get us back. So now we have our curve geometry here. And if you want to make it easier to see, if you click in your background now, you can say hide all. That will give you the curves so you can see what's going on here. So what we need to do in this case is we need to have a couple things. One, we need to draw a polyline somewhere from down here. Doesn't really matter. We'll just draw it from maybe here. And we're going to draw it out this way. And one thing I forgot to do is turn off that construction command so that this geometry we're drawing now is real. So I'm going to right click and turn that back to real. So now that I can put a angle dimension between those, which is that 17 degrees that we have as a requirement. Next, we're going to draw a 3-point arc, which in our case we're going to be onto this curve and onto this line as well. And we just place it out here. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be tangent to this in a second. So we're going to place that there. And a couple things that we want to do is we want to go ahead and make this tangent to here, to that arc, tangent to this curve, and we also want to be tangent to that curve as well. So that gives us some information for that. And we do know that this has a radius that we have to set at, let's see, 100 as well. So we need to set that. So that kind of gives us our driving information there. As you can see, it drives us where we need to go. And now we can just simply draw another polyline to close this off from here. I guess it doesn't really matter to there to close that off. And we can either trim this line or pull that back, so we just trim this off, and it's going to have another trim line there, so that now we got our curve. So again, we have our information here. This is 32, so it's tangent to there, tangent to this. This has got our 17-degree angle. This geometry doesn't matter much because it's going to be inside the model, but this is our critical things, 100 degrees inside of there. So just a simple use of our sketches to get our geometry built for us. So that will build our geometry for us. And next we can go ahead and add our blend to this geometry here, which we can select both of these edges, right click, go to our blend. In this case, those need to be 30 degrees, and hit enter to replace those. Okay, so that gives us pretty much most of our model. So the rest of it is just adding some of this other geometry on here. So we have a hole, so we're using a cut cylinder, just FYI. We're going to drop it right onto our cylinder there, and that has a diameter, let me look for that, 24. And that's going to go through the model. There we go. And then we're going to do the similar thing here, but what we're going to do first is we're going to put a cylinder on this, and what we're going to do is rotate that around with the TriBall, 90 degrees, and we're going to move it into the center of the model, and we just get that center point of that edge, or midpoint of that edge, to place that. And what we do know is this has a diameter of 32. And we know the distance is from the center, so we started in the center of this model, so we already know where we're at. We just need to set that value. In this case, it needs to be 54 from the center. Okay, so then we can go ahead and add our blend here, which has a radius of 7 for that. And now we can add our holes to this model. So we have 3 holes to add. One is our main center hole. In this case, has a diameter of 55. And you have to make sure that that is going all the way through. You got to use the through hole in our catalog to do that as well. Now it's going all the way through. And we have a hole at the top, which has a diameter of 16. And we have one more hole to deal with down here at the bottom. So what we'll do is just drag and drop it again on the center by holding the shift key down. That'll put us in the center. We can lock this down, rotate it around down 90 degrees, and snap it to the center of the part. So there's a lot of points, quadrant point, center point, midpoint, any one of those can be reused. Now we have our shape where it needs to be. We just need to set the diameter for that one, which is 22 in there. And last, make sure that it is actually going through the bottom of the model. There we go. So that is the part. Simple to build in IronCAD, nothing too complex. Again, just a few edits with the cross section, but mainly just using our standard shapes and our catalogs to build these models. So we try to avoid a lot of the sketches in our cases. So this is a good example. We can use our standard shapes, edit the sketches to get what we need, and instead of drawing everything in sketches, which take a little bit longer to do. But overall, this is a model that has a diameter of, a mass density of 2700, which will give you 1069 for the mass. This is in millimeters, by the way. So hopefully that gives you an idea how to do this in IronCAD and gives you some new tips and tricks for working with IronCAD. Thanks.